Good evening, everybody. I just want to start out by complimenting this club. You know, we've got some very advanced turners and we got some real amateurs like myself. And if you see something somebody's turned, they're more than willing to tell you how they did it and help you with it. And that's something to say about this club. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. Now, having said that, there's always that one guy in any group that's an outlier. And this individual in this group, this club, will give you a heads up on. He came to me one day and he said, "Yvonne, I need 10 pen blanks." I said, "Jim Stoudemire, I've never made a pen. I don't know what a pen blank is. I wouldn't even know where to begin." "Oh," he says, "piece of cake. You just take a piece of wood, 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch, 2 1/4 inches long, drill a hole through the middle of it." I thought, well, okay. I got me one of these jet drill presses with the laser beam, you know, all that. Foolproof. Well, let's see how foolproof it is. As you can see, I started out in center field. When I came out the other end, I was in left field. I said, "No, wait a minute. That can't be." So I did it a couple more times. Right field, left field. I couldn't find center field if you painted a star on it. So I got to thinking about it. So then I thought, I'm smarter than that. I'll make me some jigs. So I started making jigs. I just happen to like to make jigs for certain projects. Well, I made, I don't know, maybe a dozen jigs. I got close, but not in the ballpark. No, not in the ballpark. So I remember, well, I was reading an article. I used to be on the, I was chairman of a water board, and I still get the engineering news. And they were talking about fracking. And they were talking about when you vertical drill, it's very difficult to control where that bit's going to go and where it's going to come out. And I thought, yeah, I've been there. So they said if you bore a hole, which is actually just drilling only done on a horizontal plane, you have much more control. And so I tried that. And lo and behold, center field to center field. So then that's when they went into trying to figure out how I can do that. Well, there's an old saying that if you have a situation and the answer, the more complicated the answer is, the more wrong your answer is. And then I proved it with my jigs and everything. So I decided, okay, if boring's more accurate, now I don't have any wood that's 4 or 5 miles long, but maybe a 2 1/4 inch piece, if I bored it instead of drilled it, it might work out. So I went and got my handy dandy chuck. And I happen to have the brothers to this lathe at home. That's why my parts fit. And then I got my drill chuck. That guy ate a bigger breakfast than I did. And then I went and put a drill bit in. And this is a standard 7mm, it's like a brad tip drill that you buy to drill out the drill blanks for your pens. And then I got me a blank. Now on this, for demonstration purposes, I had to use a large blank. I don't use this big of a blank when I'm drilling out a drill, in an actual pen blank, but I have a smaller chuck. But the problem is, if I use a smaller blank on this big chuck, it doesn't hold it well. So you just got a lot of wood to take off the edge, that's all. And I marked the X on the center of each end. I guess for assurance purposes. Now, when you're drilling, I found if you drill at speeds above 300 RPMs, the drill will actually self-clean. If you drill slower, it gets tight, and I mean tight. And the lathe won't turn it, and you have some new words in your vocabulary to get it off the drill bit. So right now I'm about 486. I back it up a little bit, clean it out. You can pass it around so those that are nearsighted can see. And believe me, that's a lot easier than building jigs and all that stuff. Any questions?
No, but I'll make a comment. Maybe the reason your other ones weren't coming out straight is because you didn't have your bed of your drill press perpendicular to your drill bed.
I did check that.
How do you check it?
Oh, I put a level on it.
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay. How do you check it?
You take I'll say a coat hanger material, something wire equipment.
Right.
Don't bend it in a bullet seat form.
Right.
Spin it around. It doesn't matter if your lathe were leaning like this.
Right.
You'd still be perpendicular to your drill.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Learn something else.
Also, the grain now it has a lot to do with it.
What's what?
The grain of your wood.
Yes.
Drill and grain. If you have like They have a bullet point drill because I used to make them. I didn't live in trouble with them. And when you drill the one of them, I think you have 5 circles on one side to take the point. And the right drill, like the gentleman said, you have to be perpendicular to that, and also with the right drill, that the center is completely in the middle. Look at that point, like to get in the middle. And you got to buy special bits for that.
Okay.
And I never been trouble with them. Looking at the drill case.
All right. I learned something else. So any other comments? Okay. Now I'm going to start an argument. There's all kinds, I've heard all kinds of stories about CA glue. And there's some wives' tales, there's some facts, there's some hot air, and then there's reality. First off, when CA glue first came out, everybody was all excited because they thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. Well, then they found out CA glue fails. Period. It fails. Whether you use an accelerator or you don't use an accelerator, it will fail. So, before we go too far, I want to go over a couple of safety tips. While I'm doing that, so in case you want to know where I'm getting my info from, this is from Satellite City. This is industrial strength CA glue. It's supposed to be the best CA glue on the market at this time according to various tests. The box is empty, so but I'm going to pass it around so you read it, and I'm going to give you handouts on this. One of the big no-nos with that, they tell you right up front, is when you're using gloves, do not use fabric gloves. Do not use cotton gloves. They will ignite with this stuff. And guess whose fingers are in the glove? Now, I ran into an individual at a flea market who was selling turnings, and his fingers were in sad shape, gnarled, missing. And we got to talking, and he had used satellite glue, but he had a pair of cotton gloves on. And the problem is, once those gloves ignite, the glue goes into the skin. And what causes CA glue to set up? Moisture. Tonight, you do not need an accelerator. If you're on the Sahara Desert or Sonora Desert, you're going to have to use an accelerator because there's no moisture for the glue to work with. So his problem was his gloves caught fire and melted into his fingers. Well, he couldn't get, this company uses denatured alcohol to release their glue. It only works in theory. I mean, you gotta submerge your hand in alcohol. Problem was, he didn't have an assistant around. So when your fingers are like this, and you're trying to screw the cap off, it don't work too good. Okay? So make sure you use a plastic glove. Plastic gloves will disintegrate. All right? Cotton or any other type of fabric, and it will cause a problem. Now, that's the solvent they recommend, and I'm taking his word for it that it doesn't work because it was his fingers that got narrowed up. Okay. You should also have acetone with you because sometimes acetone works where denatured alcohol doesn't work. And where's the simplest source of acetone? That's why we have wives. They got fingernail polish remover. That's acetone. Or you got glue remover that you put on that takes it off. Now, one of the wives' tales that I had to get past was, well, if I put CA glue down and spray it and put it together, bam, instantly it's bonded. Wrong. It's 24 hours for that glue to set to full strength. It's tight. Yes, it's tight, but it's not set. It's not cured. This is what they say. The next thing is, where do you store your CA glue? In the refrigerator. Once CA glue reaches the temperature of 85 degrees, it starts decomposing. You can't tell any difference with it, but it loses its strength rapidly above 85 degrees. Refrigerating it does not bring it back. It's a one-shot deal. Once it's gone, it's gone. They make several different types of glue. So if the handle comes off of your teacup, you've got to use a gel CA glue, because that's the only thing. It has to bond to itself and has to have tentacles that will go down in the holes of the ceramic, and that it'll make a tight bond. However, you have to be careful of the liquid you put in it. Hot coffee, it will come loose. Hairline cracks. Say you had a plate and a hairline crack in it. You use the thinnest glue possible, because the glue has to get down in the crack in order to hold it. Glass and plastic require special grades of glue, so you have to use the correct grade. Now, when to use Accelerator. CA glue sets up according to the ambient moisture in the air. And like I said, if you're out in the middle of a desert, yep, you got to use Accelerator. Today, you probably wouldn't need it because it's wet. Another thing, no smoking. Smoking ignites CA glue. So whether you smoke or not, you can get along without whatever cancer stick you're using for the period that you're using CA glue. Heating seasons. When you got a fire in your wood shop, well, if you go to use the aerosol, remember, that will ignite. And if you got an open flame, for whatever reason nearby, it will ignite. If you spray now, here's an interesting thing. When I first got this, I had was going to make this a pen blank out of this, and I put CA glue down in there, and my plan was to push this into there, turn it after I had sprayed it, and then that would lock it in. Well, I got about that far, and that's where she quit. I hit it with a rubber hammer, I put it in my vise, it would not move. It was green at the time. Then I read where CA glue will, in about 3 months, will fail. Well, this past Sunday, I was practicing my talk in front of my wife. That's why we got wives, you know. They start in nursery school with the kids, and they listen to all kinds of reports up through vacation Bible school, Sunday school, grade school. And then when they become empty nesters, then your husband gets a speaking gig, and you got to listen to his stuff. So anyway, I picked it up, and I went like this, and the thing fell out. And I said to my wife, I said, you know, I thought I had outsmarted them, because that was green wood, and it was tight. But what happens with green wood, as it dries, the wood shrinks. As it shrinks, there's nothing for the whatever you're gluing to it to handle it. You've got a potential space in there. And that's what happened here. It's separated. Now, if I was to re-glue it, it would probably hold pretty good because it's dried out. But remember, green wood and CA glue do not work together. It's got to be, ideally, it has to be about 8% moisture. Because what I was going to do with this was cut this end off and put something different on this end, because as you can see, I've had some challenges. And some of them, what I've done, piece of Purple Heart and ebony. I try to turn lemons into lemonade. So. Okay.
The moisture in CA glue, I mean in their wood, probably helped set up your CA glue much faster, and that's why.
Yeah, initially, but then once it dried out, it was gone. Okay, one side note, I found out just here about a week ago. I was talking to someone in law enforcement, and she told me, she says, well, you know, we take CA glue and we put it into a vaporizer, and when the investigators are at a crime scene and they've got, say, a club or something that's round, and they're trying to determine who held that last, they bring it to me, I put it in a chamber, vaporize the CA glue, that sticks to the fingerprint. I bring it out, I lay a piece of Scotch tape across it, and I pick it up, and I got a fingerprint, and it's invisible on the object, and I lay it on a glass slide, and I put it under the microscope, and of course, you know, they've got databases of fingerprints from here to kingdom come, and you say, aha, Nelson's the one that did it. But I thought that was a unique way of doing the glue. Okay, if you're going to build up various layers of CA glue, you have to use a crack filler grade. And then you put the first grade on, let it dry, spray it, put the second layer on, third, fourth, and fifth, and you build it up that way. Light coats do a better job. You try to put it on heavy, it'll set up, but it'll break off. And when doing it on the lathe, I prefer to hand turn it because I can control the speed. This lathe is like my lathe. It probably has a minimum speed of about 125. And at that speed, it just doesn't work out too good. Now, let me put this together. Any questions on the CA glue so far? This is what is known as a mandrel. And you got to make sure you got lined up before you start putting it together. Lines up. You have these little bushings because you want to stand your part out away from other parts. Here's a blank. It's almost ready for this. I say almost because if it doesn't work out, I can take sandpaper and erase it off and start over again. Now, one thing about using glue, they recommend, I've seen demonstrations where they put the glue on top and held a napkin to it, spin it around, and spread it out. Well, they don't recommend that. They recommend putting it on a paper towel, which I'll show you, and putting it on down here. Because if you put it on top, it's going to spin out and come into you if anything comes loose. If you put it down here, the only guy that's got to worry about is the guy in the first row, and that's his problem, not mine. So you just take a regular, ordinary paper towel, and fold it up like that. Cut it, put it like so. I just turn that on to make sure everything's square, because I'm not going to put glue on at that speed.
I put glue on the pins at 200, 300 RPM, whatever the little 10-inch lathe will go down to.
I do it by hand. I mean, that's just me.
One thing I don't do is stay in the front.
You what?
One thing I don't do is stand in front of,
Yeah.
I'm off to the side.
I'm staying off the side too.
And the other thing I'll do is cover up the shield here, because invariably, like you said, it may splatter. And I don't let anybody at all in front of it or close to it.
You know, mine's up against the wall, so there's nothing there. And like I say, when I turn it by hand, I don't have to worry about it spraying.
Yeah.
And this is the aerosol.
What did you use there?
That's CA glue, and this is their aerosol.
Oh, okay.
And
Accelerator.
Accelerator, right?
Okay.
Was that the thin one, the thin glue?
That's thin glue. And if you put enough glue on that it's gloppy, you got too much glue on it. And if you spray this to the point where it gets wet, you got too much of this on it. It's dry, so now I can put the next layer on it. And it's recommended that you change sections of the paper towel every time, because it'll pick up lint or dust that you can't even see. And it's dry. And that's how you use CA glue. Any questions?
How many coats do you normally put on?
On a pen, on a pen, you put 10 coats on, they recommend.
You should rub in between the hands and knock it down a little bit.
Pardon?
to rub it down in the first at any time.
You can do that if you want, but if it's clean and smooth, you shouldn't have to do that.
How you polish it again?
Well, at the end you polish it. And you can use Simonized car wax, you can use various types of wax. I can't think of the name of the woodworking waxes, but it will shine up.
You sand it at the end.
If I sand it with a paper, excuse me, a paper bag, because that's very fine and it doesn't scratch. If you use emery cloth or something like that, it'll scratch it. Some old wood turner told me to use a paper bag and it works.
If you're not using Accelerator, how long do you wait?
Excuse me. It depends on the moisture in the air. It could be up to a half hour. It might be faster, it might be slower. But you use the back of your finger and you just lightly touch it. And if it's still active, it'll sticky, but you can get your finger back away. Don't ever grab it like that, because now you got to figure out how to get the fingers off.
How big of turnings have you used CA on?
Just
Bowls?
no, just pens. Like I say, I'm a neophyte in this business. I just retired, so these guys don't know what they're in for, because they've all said, "Hey, if you ever need any help," well, guys, I'm going to have some free time.
Have you done anything bigger than a 10 really?
I've been successful with bowls maybe up to 4 inches, but you get big.
Okay, that's it for me.